It's not long until the sequel to the Xperia 1 Mark V arrives, and we're even getting some leaks now. So let's talk about those leaks and what I actually want to see with the Sony Xperia 1 Mark VI. So there's been a few rumors out recently, and the major change that we're going to see with the Xperia 1 Mark VI, by the looks of things, is the aspect ratio of the phone. Now, Sony have used this aspect ratio, the 21:9, for a number of years now, since the Sony Xperia brand changed its strategy with the Mark I up to the Mark V. We've had this 21:9. It's been the same with the Xperia 5 and the Xperia 10 series as well. And it looks like, going by these images that we have, Sony has opted to make the phone a little bit wider and a little bit shorter. Now this puts it in line a little bit more with other phones. It's still retaining the edged rails as well as the sort of textured back. So all being well, it will still be a really, really nice phone to use. I still think it will probably have the best build of any phone out there in terms of utility. But like many Xperia users, and I am an Xperia user, I love this aspect ratio. I really do. It makes it so easy to use one-handed. It's great for having split screen, having, say, YouTube at the top, having something else underneath, such as Twitter/X/Twix. And you still have a lot of the phone to use when you're doing that. So I am going to miss this aspect ratio. I think that's kind of sad that it's going to be going away. However, I still think it will be a really, really nice phone to use, so I'm not going to get too hung up on it. The other major change that we are apparently going to see is the ultra-wide and the telephoto lenses on the phone moving to 48 megapixel XMOR-T sensors, which is the same brand of sensor that we have in the main camera on the Xperia 1 and 5 Mark V series. Great sensors. It's all part of the dual layer transistor sensors that they've done XMOR-T. For other phones, they're branded as Lightyear. Big upgrades for those sensors, and they need those upgrades big time. They're two of the things that I actually really wanted to see upgraded. We'll see which sensors they actually decide to put in there, but upgrades are always welcome. And Sony are sticking with that full screen. We're not getting any hole punch or under display camera or anything like that. So that is also very, very good. And with that display, by the way, it's apparently losing the 4K aspect. It's going to go down to something like a Quad HD LTPO panel. I actually think that is a very good move, because even though this screen is excellent, it's actually running in 1080p most of the time. It's only 4K when you're looking at 4K media. It's not really that big a deal. So LTPO, Quad HD, it should be a lot better. You should get better battery life with it being LTPO as well. So, and as well as that, we should get brighter display. And that is something that this phone definitely needs. It needs a brighter display. And Sony have struggled with this for a few years. The Xperia 1 Mark V is not that bad, but it definitely needs more brightness. And they also need to improve the auto brightness, because right now it's not very accurate. It dims far too often to the point where you can't really see what's going on. And actually, I've got a weird bug at the minute on this, where if I have auto brightness on, the frame rate drops once the phone dims, which is really weird. So I've turned that off and the frame rate's now fine. It's running at 120 Hz, not a problem. So what do I want to see with the 1 Mark VI? Now, mentioning with those cameras, we have upgrades coming for the ultra-wide and the telephoto to 48 megapixels, which means all three cameras on the rear will be 48 megapixels. I want full resolution images. This is something that I have on the Pixel 8 Pro, and on that, I have taken some stunning shots, or at least what I deem to be stunning for me, that I wouldn't have been able to take on another phone because of that. It just gives you so much room for maneuver with certain types of shots for cropping and and, you know, framing. It's really, really useful to have. So I really want Sony to go all in on that, give us full resolution images, because one of the things that bugged me a lot with the Xperia 1 Mark 5 is having a 48 megapixel main sensor, well, 52 megapixels technically, but 48 megapixels, and not being able to take a RAW shot in full resolution. They still get reduced down to 12 megapixels. Hugely frustrating, and hopefully Sony update this to give it that feature set as well, because that's something that it really should get. Video features, I think there's a lot there already, but in terms of photography, this is the area I want to see improved most. How the phone handles backlighting. So, you know, if you've got the sun a little bit more sort of shining into the frame, or a brighter background to something a little bit darker in the foreground, Xperia does not handle that very well at all. It really struggles with that. It's not so bad if you can take a RAW shot, but you still lose quite a bit of the detail in the background in the HDR. Pixel does not have that issue at all. Samsung is very good in general. iPhone as well. That's probably my main bugbear with the Xperia. If they can solve that issue, then I'd have no problem using the Xperia as my main phone at all times, which would be pretty good. One other thing I'd like them to do, and this might, you know, maybe they've changed the dimensions of the phone to allow for, you know, changes to the internal hardware. I really want a better haptic motor. Now, I find the one in the Xperias to be quite buzzy, quite loud. It feels okay, but when it's in a case, it sounds pretty horrendous and doesn't feel that great. I want something more akin to what the Pixel has, or the Galaxy S Ultra has, Galaxy Note. Just something that feels nice, and it's not loud. It just feels tactile, feels accurate, and it's just a really nice feeling you get from nice feedback you get from the phone. So I'd like to see that in the Xperia as well. That would be really, really nice to have. So fingers crossed, that's what they do. I'd really, really like to see a bump to charging speeds. I know Sony are very much focused on battery health, and they do offer some great features in terms of the software on that front, with regards to capping charging at 80%, or HS power control, heat suppression power control. They're nice things to have. But the charging speed needs to be increased. These SoCs are definitely getting more powerful. Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 is going to come in the next Xperia in all likelihood. And, you know, it has a fair amount of power draw when it's pushed. So for HS power control to really work, you need a charger that can supply enough power to the phone. So I would like to see minimum 45 watts on charging on the 1 Mark 6. 30 watts on the current Xperia is okay, but it really needs that bump. It really needs that bump to compete. 45 watts isn't even fast these days either. I would like more than that, but I would imagine that we won't get that. So, yeah, that's something that I would really like to see. Something that I'd like Sony to sort of steal from Samsung as well, and others. There's, you know, Oppo and others do similar things. Is to just not have the phone run at full speed all the time. So like have a light performance profile like Samsung does. So the SoC doesn't have to run at max all the time. That would save on battery life. It'd extend it. I think we're at the point now where all manufacturers should be offering different performance profiles. I mean, I'd like to have more than one. I'd like to be able to turn things down even more, because for general use, you don't need it. So I'd like to see more software features in that regard. And when it comes to software, Sony, we need more than 2 years of OS updates. It needs to happen. It needs to happen now. Give us minimum 3. We need 5 years security updates minimum as well. Just do it. All of those things, I think you would be well placed to sort of be competing even with Samsung and everyone else for mindshare, because a lot of the time Xperias are just getting dismissed because of not having certain features, especially when it comes to software updates. Software updates is something that some people mention non-stop because it's an easy way to get at them and just say, well, look, they don't even offer this. They charge, you know, £1,300 for a phone and they offer 2 years of OS support. And to be frank, it isn't good enough. We need more than that. Like the Sony Xperia Pro I now does not get any more OS updates. That phone should be supported for quite some time. Ideally, really, it should be. That phone was like 1,900 quid when it came out. So we need to see that. We need to see more of that software support. I would really like as well, in terms of software updates, even though, you know, Sony's quite good on these updates now, I actually think there need to be a little bit more, there needs to be more quality control. Every time I've had an update for the Xperia 1 Mark V, especially since Android 14, there's been odd issues going on with frame rate dropping when I go into Discord and I'm looking at emotes, or if I'm looking at video and then the frame rate of the phone just completely stutters for scrolling when there's a video playing, especially on like YouTube or even on Twitter. You know, it was kind of weird. Got an update recently which sort of fixed that, but then as I've mentioned already, now what happens is the auto brightness drops and then the frame rate drops, so it's like it's running at 60 Hertz all of a sudden for no reason. And I've found I just disable auto brightness and that issue goes away. It runs at 120. So we need better quality control on those software updates as well. I see a lot of people that have particular issues with their Xperias and they get rid of it. And I've had those issues myself, and I know it's a software thing. There's nothing wrong with the hardware, it's software. So that needs to be sorted, need to get it right. And yeah, try and bring the phone to more markets. I think some places now, even if it's just the one model, just try and get it into more markets. I'm not saying release it everywhere. Maybe just add 1 or 2 new markets, bigger markets, such as India if you can. And I think people would still buy it. I think people would buy it. So yeah, that's my thoughts on the Sony Xperia 1 Mark VI. I'll have it day one, by the way. I will have it. I will review it. I'm going to have a review coming for the Xperia 1 Mark V shortly, talking about some of these issues, but also a lot of the good stuff that you can do with a Sony Xperia. So stay tuned for that. Of course, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And yeah, not long to go. We'll see what gets announced. I will probably get more leaks first, but we'll see what gets announced. Thanks for watching, guys. Stay grounded. I will see you soon for more Xperia content. Take it easy.